When my daughter told me I was a burden, and her husband smirked that they'd take care of my house, I didn't argue. I just sipped my coffee and smiled. It cut deeper than any insult I'd ever heard, but I stayed quiet. By Christmas, I had already sold the house they wanted so badly, and trust me, that was just the beginning of my revenge. Justice isn't optional, it's necessary. You won't believe what happened next. Stay until the end, and hit subscribe if you think greed should always backfire. My name's Margaret Allen, but most folks in town just call me Maggie. I've lived in Cedar Falls, Ohio, my whole life. It's one of those mid-sized towns where everybody knows who's parked in whose driveway, and the local diner's gossip spreads faster than wildfire. I raised my 2 kids here, buried my husband here, and I figured I'd probably die here too. I'm not some frail old lady clutching pearls, don't get me wrong. I still mow my own lawn, shovel my own driveway when it snows, and I know my way around a Home Depot aisle better than most men my age. I'd always been the type to mind my own business, keep the peace, and avoid family drama as much as possible. But family has a funny way of dragging you in whether you like it or not. My son Daniel is 34, married to Brittany, my daughter-in-law, and they've got 2 little ones. Then there's my daughter Jessica, 31, married to Kyle. Out of the 2 of them, Jessica's always been closer to me, the kind who'll call just to chat about a TV show or complain about gas prices. Daniel, on the other hand, well, he's become more distant since Brittany came into the picture. Now Brittany, where do I even start? She's one of those women who could walk into a PTA meeting and somehow make everyone else feel underdressed and unworthy, even though half of it's just smoke and mirrors. The lashes, the spray tans, the carefully curated Instagram perfect house, all while barking at Daniel like he's some employee she's about to write up. I tried, Lord knows I tried, to keep the peace for the sake of the kids. But over the years, I started noticing little things. The way she'd roll her eyes when I gave the kids Christmas presents that weren't from Pottery Barn, or how she'd forget to invite me to family cookouts, but somehow her mom always had a seat at the table. Speaking of her mom, Linda, that woman is something else entirely. Imagine the type who thinks retail therapy counts as a personality and that her opinion is the law of the land. She has this way of swooping into conversations like she owns the air you're breathing. The first time she called me the babysitter, I brushed it off. But the sting never really left. And I should have seen the signs earlier. There were breadcrumbs. Like the time a strange SUV was parked outside my house, engine running, and when I peeked through the blinds, it was Brittany's mom dropping off bags at my front door, bags that I later realized were filled with the kids' old clothes. No note, no text, just dumped there like I was Goodwill. Or when Daniel asked me one afternoon if I'd consider downsizing my house, because maybe you'd be happier in a condo closer to Jessica. I laughed it off at the time, but it planted this uncomfortable seed in my gut. Cedar Falls might be a small town, but the houses aren't cheap. I paid off this place with my husband, working 2 jobs at times, me at the library during the day and cleaning offices at night, so no one was about to tell me where I should live. Still, I could feel something brewing beneath the surface. Call it mother's intuition, call it foreshadowing if you will, but I knew deep down that storm clouds were gathering. And the worst part? My own children were at the center of it. The breaking point didn't happen overnight. It was like erosion, slow, subtle, and almost invisible, until suddenly half the cliffside was gone and you realized you'd been standing on sand the whole time. It started with Thanksgiving last year. I'd spent 2 days cooking, roast turkey, sweet potato casserole, pumpkin pie from scratch, the works. Daniel and Brittany showed up late, kids in tow, and Brittany had the nerve to plop down a store-bought pecan pie like she was doing me some favor. Then, halfway through dinner, she wrinkled her nose and whispered loud enough for me to hear, "My mom's stuffing is way better. At least she doesn't burn the breadcrumbs." Everyone laughed. My cheeks burned hotter than the oven. Then Christmas came. Normally, I'd host. It's what we've always done. But that year, Daniel told me, "We'll just do it at our place. Less stress on you, Mom." Less stress on me? Please. They didn't want me there. When I showed up with presents anyway, Brittany's mom answered the door like it was her house and said, "Oh Maggie, you didn't have to come all the way out here. We've got things handled." The words were sugar, but the tone was poison. I swallowed it. For Daniel's sake. For the grandkids' sake. But I knew. I wasn't welcome. By spring, the whispers turned into conversations I wasn't supposed to hear. One afternoon, I was babysitting so Daniel and Brittany could attend some investment seminar in Columbus. After they left, I went to put away toys in the living room, and there it was, papers left out on the coffee table. Not bills. Not junk mail. But a real estate listing. My house. My exact street. My exact square footage. Circled in red marker. I sat down, staring at it like it might burst into flames. When they came home, Brittany was all smiles. Thanks so much, Maggie. We couldn't do it without you. I wanted to scream, without me? Honey, you literally couldn't afford to breathe without me. But instead, I just nodded. The real dagger came a week later. Jessica and Kyle stopped by my place one evening. I was pouring coffee when Jessica sighed and said, "Mom, maybe it's time you think about what happens next. Like, you're in this big house alone. It doesn't make sense. You could sell it, move into something smaller. We could help." Her husband Kyle chimed in with a grin that made my stomach turn. "Yeah, Jess and I were just talking. It's crazy you've got all this space. We'd love to raise a family here. It's got that perfect backyard. You'd be so much happier in a condo downtown." I nearly dropped the mug. They weren't suggesting. They were plotting. My own daughter. The girl I rocked to sleep when she had fevers. The one I sewed prom dresses for because we couldn't afford the fancy boutiques. She wanted my house. I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, "You think I'd be happier giving up the home your father and I built together?" Jessica rolled her eyes. "Mom, don't be dramatic. You can't keep living in the past. Dad's gone. This place is too much for you. And honestly," she hesitated, then shrugged, "Kyle and I could actually put it to better use. You'd be doing something good for us." For us. Not for me. For them. I bit my tongue until it nearly bled. I wanted to shout, to throw them out, to slam the door and never let them back in. But instead, I just smiled thinly and said, "I'll think about it." Because here's the thing, I wasn't powerless. They thought age had dulled me, that grief had weakened me, that my quiet meant I'd rolled over. But I was watching. Listening. Taking notes. By summer, the insults grew sharper. At a 4th of July barbecue, Brittany's mom clinked her wine glass and joked to the whole patio, "Well, when Maggie finally kicks the bucket, at least the kids won't have to fight over who gets the house." Laughter erupted. I forced a laugh too, but inside, something cracked. That night, alone in my kitchen, I stood over the sink with tears streaming down my face. Not because they'd hurt me, I was used to that by now, but because I realized my family had stopped seeing me as a person. To them, I was square footage. A deed. A mortgage-free asset. And that was the moment I decided, if they wanted my house so badly, they'd soon learn a painful lesson about entitlement. I didn't say a word to Jessica that night, or to Kyle, or even to Daniel and Brittany. I just let them keep talking. Let them keep plotting, laughing, assuming. I realized the smartest thing I could do was play along, quiet, small, invisible. Because sometimes the best way to set a trap is to let your prey walk right into it. The first hint of a shift came in July, when Daniel stopped by with Brittany. They plopped down at my kitchen table like they owned the place. Daniel cleared his throat. "Mom, we've been thinking. Maybe it's time to, put together a plan for the future. You don't have to worry about the details. Brittany's mom knows a realtor. She can help sell the house quick. Cash buyers, no stress." I stirred my tea slowly. "Oh, that's nice," I said, like I was clueless. "But where would I live?" Brittany leaned forward, that fake sweet smile plastered on her face. "Well, there are some really nice assisted living communities in Dayton. Very modern. Pool, activities, everything you'd need. You'd love it." I almost laughed. Assisted living? I'm 61, not 91. My hip still works fine, thank you very much. But I kept my poker face. I murmured. "Sounds interesting. Maybe I should look into it." Their shoulders visibly relaxed. They thought I was folding. They thought they were winning. And that's when I knew I had them exactly where I wanted. The very next morning, I drove down to the county clerk's office. Most people forget public records are just sitting there, waiting for anyone to read. Mortgages, liens, deeds, it's all a matter of paperwork. I requested copies of my property deed, and while I was at it, I asked a clerk about transfer on death designations. She looked at me over her glasses and said, "You can assign who gets the property after you pass. Keeps it out of probate court." I filed that little piece of information away like a bullet in my pocket. But I wasn't done. The second twist came when I opened an old safety deposit box at my credit union. It had been years since I'd touched it. Inside were stock certificates, shares in a trucking company my late husband, Mike, invested in during the 90s. I thought they'd gone under. Turns out, they'd been bought out by a logistics firm. I called the broker listed on the paperwork. He chuckled and said, "Ma'am, those shares are worth north of 6 figures now. You've been sitting on a gold mine." I swear, I had to sit down right there in the bank. 6 figures. That meant freedom. Options. Leverage. And that's when the plan started to take shape. The irony? They were so busy scheming about the house, they never bothered to wonder if I had anything else. To them, I was broke, washed up, 1 foot in the grave. But what they didn't know was that I had resources tucked away, more than enough to turn their little plan upside down. The next family dinner sealed the deal. We were at Daniel's place, burgers on the grill, kids running around with sparklers. Jessica raised her glass of wine and said, loud enough for the whole yard to hear, to Mom, finally making the smart choice to downsize. Everyone clapped. My own children clapped like I was some senile woman finally agreeing to let go of her toys. I smiled, sipping my iced tea. "Yes," I said. "It's time for a big change. Bigger than you all think." And I swear to you, the way their eyes lit up with greed, I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. Because here's the twist, they thought I was giving in. What they didn't know was that I was about to sell the house myself, on my own terms, and not a single penny of it would end up in their entitled hands. The betrayal stung deeper the more I thought about it. Daniel was my baby boy. I stayed up with him through endless nights of ear infections. Jessica was my firstborn. I worked overtime during my paralegal years just to buy her first prom dress. And now? They looked at me and saw a burden. A roadblock between them and an easy payout. But the thing is, I wasn't helpless. Not anymore. That week, I called an old contact from my law firm days, Martha Green, who had since become a probate judge in Montgomery County. We hadn't spoken in years, but when I explained what was happening, she sighed and said, "Honey, you need to put your affairs in order before they try to do it for you. Draft a transfer on death deed. Lock down your power of attorney with someone you actually trust." That someone was my younger son, Kyle. Unlike Daniel and Jessica, Kyle had never treated me like dead weight. He visited without expecting anything. He fixed my sink last Christmas. He never once brought up the house. I drove over to his apartment one night with a stack of papers. We sat on his worn-out couch while I explained everything. He rubbed his temples, shaking his head. I knew Jess was manipulative, but Daniel? I didn't think he'd go along with it. "Greed makes people do ugly things," I told him. He looked me dead in the eye. "So what's the plan, Mom?" That was the moment everything shifted. For the first time in years, I wasn't alone in this. The plan was simple on paper but ruthless in execution. I'd quietly put my house on the market myself, with my own realtor, one recommended by Martha's firm. I'd cash out, move somewhere new, and restructure my finances so not a single penny could be siphoned off by Daniel or Jessica. And Kyle? He'd be listed as the executor of my estate, with full knowledge of where everything was. I wasn't just protecting myself. I was making damn sure my legacy didn't end up in the hands of people who saw me as disposable. What Daniel and Jessica didn't know was that the burden they mocked had spent decades learning how to read the fine print, how to play the long game, how to bide her time until the right moment. And now, that moment had come. I didn't sleep much the night before the realtor's open house. My kitchen table was covered in paperwork, contracts, power of attorney forms, a brand new transfer on death deed with Kyle's name on it. My coffee went cold as I reread every line, double-checking, triple-checking, because I knew once this train left the station, there was no going back. I had spent decades playing the role of caretaker, peacekeeper, pushover. But now I was done playing small. The first strike came faster than I expected. Jessica showed up unannounced one Tuesday afternoon, Starbucks in hand, fake smile plastered on her face. "Hey Mom," she sang, strolling in like she owned the place. I was thinking, Maybe it's time we schedule some tours at assisted living facilities. Daniel and I have a list. Her tone wasn't gentle. It was patronizing, sharp, dripping with condescension. I set down the dish towel I was holding and looked her straight in the eye. Funny, I said. Because I just signed papers to sell this place myself. Realtors stopping by tomorrow. Her smile cracked like glass. What? Without talking to us? Us? I asked, my voice flat. Last I checked, this house was in my name. Not yours. Not Daniel's. She stammered, searching for words. I didn't give her the chance. And before you even try, power of attorney has already been reassigned. Kyle's handling things now. Jessica's face went pale. Kyle? She spat, like the name was poison. He doesn't even. Finish that sentence, I cut in, and I'll have you out of here faster than you can say inheritance. For once, she shut her mouth. The second strike came at Sunday dinner. Daniel had invited himself and Jessica over, under the pretense of a family talk. I let them think I was clueless. I cooked a roast, set the table, poured wine. They came in all puffed up, smug like they'd already won. About halfway through the meal, Daniel cleared his throat. So, Mom, about the house. Jess and I were thinking, it would be smart to transfer the deed sooner rather than later. That way, you don't get stuck with estate taxes when the time comes. I dabbed my mouth with a napkin. Oh honey, that's so thoughtful of you. Except the deed's already been transferred. Jessica's fork clattered onto her plate. Excuse me. To Kyle, I said calmly. I let the words hang in the air like a thunderclap. Daniel's face turned beet red. You did what? I smiled. Kyle has full authority. Executor, power of attorney, the works. You too? You're not even listed as beneficiaries anymore. Jessica slammed her hand on the table. You can't do that. Yes, I can, I said, my voice steady. I was a paralegal, remember? I know the law better than you know how to budget a grocery bill. And I'm telling you right now, legally, financially, morally, you have no power over me. Daniel leaned forward, veins bulging in his neck. After everything we've done for you. I laughed, sharp and bitter. Done for me? The two of you have spent months scheming behind my back. You called me a burden. You mocked me in my own home. And now you expect me to hand you the keys to the only thing your father and I built together? Over my dead body. Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. And then, as if on cue, Kyle walked through the door. He'd been waiting outside, ready for the moment I signaled. He dropped a thick envelope onto the table. These are the signed documents, he said evenly. Deed transfer, financial accounts, everything notarized. You guys are officially out. Daniel snatched the envelope and flipped through the pages, his face twisting with every line. Jessica peeked over his shoulder, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. This is insane, Daniel muttered. You can't just cut us out like that. Kyle crossed his arms. She can. And she did. Maybe if you'd treated her with respect, things would have been different. But you didn't. You treated her like a paycheck. I leaned back, my chest swelling with a mixture of rage and relief. For the first time in years, I felt like I was breathing freely. You two wanted the house so badly, I said, but here's the punchline, it's already under contract. Selling for way more than you ever guessed. And when the check clears, I'll be moving somewhere warm, somewhere peaceful, where I don't have to put up with your entitlement. Jessica's eyes filled with tears, not of sadness but of fury. You're choosing Kyle over us? No, I corrected. I'm choosing myself. Something I should have done a long time ago. The next few minutes were chaos, Daniel shouting, Jessica swearing, Kyle standing firm. Finally, I stood, slammed my hand on the table, and let every ounce of steel in me surface. Get out, I said. They froze. You heard me. Get out of my house. You don't own it, you don't control it, and you sure as hell don't get to disrespect me under my roof anymore. So get out, before I call the cops and file a restraining order. And I meant it. I knew the process, I knew the paperwork, and I was more than ready to file if they tested me. Daniel shoved his chair back so hard it scraped the hardwood. Jessica followed, muttering under her breath. The slam of the front door echoed like a victory bell. When the silence returned, I sank into my chair, trembling with adrenaline. Kyle placed a steady hand on my shoulder. "You did it, Mom," he said softly. "No," I whispered, a slow smile spreading across my face. "We did it." That night, as I packed away the dishes, I realized something. This wasn't just about protecting my house or my money. It was about reclaiming the part of me I'd buried for too long, the fighter, the strategist, the woman who refused to be dismissed. And for the first time in years, I felt alive. The house closed 2 weeks later. I signed the last document at the title office, and the wire hit my account that same afternoon, $890,000. More money than I ever imagined I'd see in one place. When the banker confirmed the transfer, I sat there stunned, like I'd been holding my breath for years, and finally exhaled. That evening, I walked through the empty rooms of my old house one last time. The walls still smelled faintly of the vanilla candles I used to burn. The creak in the hallway floorboard was still there, just like when my late husband, Mark, used to joke that it was our built-in burglar alarm. My throat tightened, but instead of crying, I whispered thank you to the house itself. It had served me well. Now it was time to let it go. When I shut the front door for the last time, I didn't feel loss. I felt free. I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment downtown, smaller but modern, with big windows that let the sun pour in every morning. I bought new furniture, nothing fancy, just things that felt like mine. No hand-me-downs, no relics of obligation. For the first time, my space reflected me, not who I was expected to be. Kyle helped me set everything up. He even surprised me by framing one of Dad's old photographs for the living room wall. "Home isn't 4 walls," he said as he hung it. "It's wherever you feel safe." Safe. I rolled the word around in my head like a marble. That's what I had built, safety. Meanwhile, Jessica and Daniel didn't take the news well. Oh, they tried, angry voicemails, bitter texts, even a half-hearted threat to challenge the will. But my lawyer made sure every I was dotted, every T crossed. Legally, they had nothing. Emotionally, they had less than nothing. Because once respect is gone, you can't claw it back. At first, I braced myself for guilt. A mother cutting off her daughter? It sounded harsh. But the guilt never came. What came instead was clarity. I realized I had spent decades bending over backward, confusing enabling with love. And all it got me was disrespect. This wasn't cruelty. This was accountability. Word got around fast in our family circle. My sister called and said, "Honestly? Good for you. About time someone put Jessica in her place." Even a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years sent me a message, "You're an inspiration. Don't let them gaslight you." And that's when it hit me, how many people silently live with the same dynamic. Being treated like a wallet instead of a human. Being guilt-tripped into giving, until there's nothing left. I decided I wouldn't just survive this, I'd own it. I signed up for a community class at the library, estate planning for seniors. I started volunteering once a week at a legal aid center, helping other retirees understand their rights. Knowledge is power, and I wasn't going to hoard it. One afternoon, sitting in the park, sipping my coffee while Kyle tossed a football with his son, I felt something I hadn't in years: peace. The kind that sits deep in your bones. I wasn't a burden. I wasn't disposable. I wasn't an old lady clinging to the past. I was a woman who had been underestimated, and I'd proven everyone wrong. The best part? Jessica and Daniel now had to live with the consequences of their own greed. No inheritance to wait on. No house to flip. Just the cold reality that manipulation doesn't pay. And me? I had my freedom, my dignity, and enough money in the bank to live the rest of my life on my terms. If that's not justice, I don't know what is. Family is supposed to be about love, respect, and loyalty. But the hard truth is, sometimes blood isn't thicker than water. Sometimes the people who are supposed to care for us the most are the very ones who drain us dry. That was my story. For years, I confused sacrifice with love, thinking if I just gave a little more, bent a little further, they would see my worth. But here's the lesson I had to learn the hard way: when someone doesn't respect you, no amount of giving will ever make them start. In America, We value independence, self-reliance, and dignity. That's why we have laws like estate planning, wills, trusts, restraining orders, tools to protect ourselves, even from our own family when necessary. Setting boundaries isn't cruelty. It's survival. It's self-respect. For anyone watching who has ever been called a burden, let me tell you, you are not a burden. You are not disposable. And you are not obligated to destroy yourself to keep toxic people comfortable. You worked hard for your life, your home, your retirement, your 401k. It's not selfish to protect it. It's smart. Sometimes love means letting go. Sometimes justice looks like walking away and never turning back. And sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't screaming or fighting. It's choosing yourself, building a life where you are safe, respected, and finally free. My daughter and her husband lost their chance with me not because I stopped loving them, but because they stopped valuing me. And when someone shows you who they are, you believe them. The takeaway? Don't wait for validation that will never come. Don't hand over your peace to people who thrive on control. Stand firm. Protect what's yours. Because the moment you realize your worth is the moment you take back your power. And that's not just survival, that's freedom. They thought I was weak because I gave them everything. They only learned my strength when I gave them nothing. Respect isn't given, it's enforced. That's the velvet kiss revenge.